A man stands barefoot on cold stone in a pitch-black room. The air is so thick with the sharp smoke of burning frankincense. Then Phineas. Then Eli. Then Zadok. Down through the centuries. Through civil wars and Babylonian exiles and the crushing weight of Greek and Roman occupations, Abram, the patriarch. The man who heard the voice of the Creator and left everything behind. The man who holds the promises of the entire human race stops. He bows. He takes 10% of the spoils of war and hands it to a man with no known parents, no recorded genealogy, and no tribal affiliation. Most readers skip right past this encounter as a strange piece of ancient trivia. But if you look closer, this brief meeting in a quiet valley shatters the entire foundation of the Levitical system before it even begins. Melchizedek is not a historical footnote. He is a theological earthquake. In the ancient world, the roles of king and priest were strictly, violently separated. A king held the sword. A priest held the blood. Centuries later, King Uzziah would try to combine them in the temple, and his skin would erupt in leprosy. But here, in the dust of Genesis, stands a man who holds both titles flawlessly. Melech means king. Tzedek means righteousness. He is the king of righteousness. And he rules over Salem Shalom, the king of peace. Aaron stands in fear in a dark room. Melchizedek rules in peace in an open valley. Aaron offers the terrified blood of animals. Melchizedek offers the quiet hospitality of bread and wine. Aaron dies on a mountain, strips off his garments, and passes his office to an unbroken chain of mortal men wearing the same 12 stones on their chests, carrying the same blood into the same terrifying room. Compromised, son. Melchizedek has no recorded birth and no recorded death, representing a priesthood that never ends, unbothered by human decay. And then, just as quickly as he appears, he vanishes from the text. The tent is built. The Levites take over. The goats are slaughtered. The phantom order of the King of Peace is buried under 1,000 years of Levitical law, seemingly forgotten, until an Israelite king sits in Jerusalem centuries later and writes Psalm 110, declaring that a Messiah is coming who will not be a priest of Aaron, but a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The Levitical system was always a placeholder. But before the true King of Peace could arrive, the Aaronic priesthood had to reach its absolute, terrifying bottom. And that bottom had a name. The bottom of the descent has a name: Joseph Caiaphas. By the 1st century, the office of the Kohen Gadol is a hollow shell. The empire occupies the land. The legions patrol the streets. The Roman governor stands on the stone balcony overlooking the temple courts. The office of Aaron is no longer a divine calling. It is a political appointment. Before Caiaphas takes power, the Roman prefect, Valerius Gratus, treats the priesthood like a revolving door. He appoints a priest, he fires him. He appoints another, he fires him. Most people assume the high priest of Israel was just a religious administrator. We read the ancient texts and picture a 1st century version: 4 high priests in 4 brief years. The holy office becomes a municipal contract, bought with favors and silver. The sacred garments are not even kept in the temple. They are locked inside the Antonia fortress. They sit in the dark under the heavy boots of pagan guards. They smell like Roman leather and cold iron. The governor only releases the woven ephod and the gemstone breastplate for the major festivals. Rome literally holds the theology of Israel hostage. The high priest of the 1st century is not a mediator of divine mercy. He is a manager of Roman stability. Caiaphas holds the office for 18 unbroken years. That is an unnaturally long tenure. Most men under Roman occupation barely last 12 months. Caiaphas survives because he knows exactly how to play the brutal game of empire. He balances the blood of the altar with the threat of Roman swords. He sits in his polished courtyard. He monitors the crowds. He calculates the risk of a riot. The temple is no longer a terrifying encounter with holiness. It is a massive economic machine. It churns out ritual purity for a fee. The priests inspect the doves. The knives flash in the sun. The blood splashes against the base of the massive bronze altar. Silver coins clink into the collection chests. Thousands of animals bleed on the hot limestone pavement. Of a pope or an archbishop, we see a man at the top of an organizational chart who managed the treasury, governed the local courts. The incense burns. The gold bells chime. The system functions like a slaughterhouse assembly line. Cold, efficient, dead. This is the tragic state of the Aaronic line. A compromised man wearing rented robes. A political survivor terrified of losing his seat. A system running entirely on momentum, completely emptied of its original power. But then a rabbi from Nazareth rides into the city. He does not carry a sword. He does not bring a sacrificial goat. He walks straight into the temple courts. He starts overturning the heavy wooden tables. He dumps the silver coins onto the stone floor. He disrupts the machine. He is not a Levite. He has no genealogical claim to the earthly temple, but he speaks with the quiet, unbending authority of the King of Peace. Caiaphas watches the disruption. He feels the Roman pressure mounting, and he makes a cold, political calculation, a calculation that will drag the high priesthood into the darkest room in human history. The high priest sits on an elevated stone bench in the dead of night. Torches flicker on the polished walls of the courtyard, casting long, distorted shadows. Caiaphas leans forward, his dark eyes locked on the bound, bruised prisoner standing before him. The atmosphere is tense, smelling of burning charcoal and cold sweat. This is not a trial to find the truth. This is an execution of convenience. Caiaphas demands to know if this silent man is the Messiah, and told the people what the heavens expected of them. We assume the office was simply the peak of a spiritual hierarchy, designed by God, the Son of God. Jesus looks him in the eye and speaks. He does not plead. He does not beg. He simply claims that they will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Caiaphas gasps. In a display of theatrical rage, he reaches his hands to his neck, grips his fine, woven tunic, and rips it down the middle. He screams the word blasphemy. But according to the ancient law of Leviticus 21, the high priest was strictly, explicitly forbidden from ever tearing his garments. To tear the holy vestments was a capital offense. It was a physical tearing of the office itself. In his haste to protect the system, the high priest has symbolically shattered it. Hours later, the sky turns black at noon. The prisoner hangs from 3 iron nails on a rocky hill, outside the city walls. He is gasping for air. He has no bronze basin, no incense, and no golden crown. But he is carrying the weight of a shattered covenant on his shoulders. At the exact moment he draws his final, agonizing breath and cries out that it is finished. A violent tremor tears through the bedrock of Jerusalem. Inside the temple, where the priests are busy preparing the evening sacrifices, a sound like a thunderclap rips through the quiet sanctuary. The massive veil, 60 feet tall, hand-woven, as thick as a man's palm, to govern his people forever. And it did carry that institutional weight sometimes. But if you look closer at the precise, bizarre architecture, the barrier that kept humanity from being destroyed by the radioactive holiness of God rips in half, not from the bottom up, as if torn by human hands. It rips from the top down. The dark, terrifying room is suddenly exposed to the open air. The light of day floods the Holy of Holies, and the priests standing in the outer court look inside with wide, terrified eyes. They do not find a physical throne. They do not find a glowing light. They find an empty room. The presence of God has left the building. The biohazard containment strategy of the Aaronic line is over. The curtain cannot be sewn back together, because the true high priest has just carried his own blood behind the eternal veil. But the collapse of this ancient temple system is not just an old historical event, it is the exposing of a profound, universal human reality that we still struggle with today. We do not build stone altars anymore. We do not lead goats through the city streets. We do not wait outside a heavy curtain in terrifying silence. We look back at the blood on the limestone and we assume we have evolved past the need for a priest. We assume the office was just an ancient coping mechanism for a world that did not understand the human mind, of the garments they had to wear. At the violent death toll of the men who approached the presence of God incorrectly, we replaced the bronze basin with the therapist's couch. We replaced the high priest with the self-help guru. We replaced the burning incense with a glowing screen. But the underlying fracture remains. The human instinct does not die. We still feel the infinite distance between who we are and who we were meant to be. We still wake up in the dark with a cold weight sitting heavy in our chest. We still look at the wreckage of our own decisions, the relationships we fractured, the words we cannot take back, the quiet betrayals no one else saw, and we still desperately want someone to stand in the gap. The ancient temple system was not a primitive superstition. It was a precise diagnosis. We are a species addicted to kafir. We are constantly trying to smear a protective coating over our own shame. We cover it with money. We cover it with achievements. We cover it with carefully curated digital avatars. We act as our own high priests, standing in the ruins of our own making, holding up our frail accomplishments like a makeshift sealant. But the pitch always wears off. The coating cracks. The rot underneath remains untouched, because a compromised human being cannot mediate their own rescue. Aaron could not do it in the desert wind. Caiaphas could not do it in the Roman shadow. And we cannot do it in the modern world. At the way the entire office finally collapsed in on itself, in the shadow of a Roman cross, you start to see something. We do not need a better system of covering. We need a completely different order of priest. We need a mediator who does not have to offer a sacrifice for his own failures first. We need a king of peace who cannot be bullied by the empire, who does not rent his robes, and who does not panic when the darkness falls. A flawed man steps into a desert tent and proves humanity cannot survive the divine presence alone. A phantom king offers bread and wine in a valley and reveals a priesthood that never decays. A king's skin erupts in white leprosy and proves the crown and the altar cannot be held by the same mortal hands. A desperate politician tears his woven robes in the night and shatters the ancient system he was trying to save. A slaughtered goat coats a golden lid with warm blood and provides a temporary sealant that never cures the rot. A rabbi hangs gasping on a Roman cross and provides the permanent cure the law could never achieve. A massive curtain rips from top to bottom, and the darkest, the most terrifying room in the world is thrown open to the light. The institutional reading completely misses. The high priesthood is not a permanent establishment. It is a desperate countdown. 15 centuries of covering. One torn veil. One final priest. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the bells. Tiny gold bells sewn onto the hem of a terrified man's robe, chiming in the dark so that he does not die. For 15 centuries, that was the best we had. A terrified mediator trying not to be consumed by the very God he was trying to reach. A system built entirely on the fear of an unholy people standing before a holy creator. If you are in a season where you feel like you are desperately trying to kafar your own life, you need to hear this. If you are exhausted from smearing pitch over your own cracks, trying to present a flawless resume, a perfect family, or a holy exterior, to a God you are secretly afraid of, you can stop. You do not have to be your own priest anymore. The torn veil is not just a historical event, it is a permanent invitation. The King of Righteousness does not demand the blood of a goat, and he does not require you to wear the heavy garments of perfection. He holds out bread, he holds out wine, and he meets you in the valley. And may the God who ripped the heavy veil from the top down walk with you out of the... Every single man who put on the woven ephod was demonstrating a failure he could not fix. Every drop of blood carried behind the heavy curtain, terrifying shadows of your own making, and bring you into the open air of his permanent peace, that it burns his eyes and coats his throat. Around the hem of his white linen robe, tiny gold bells chime in the silence. Was nothing more than a temporary patch on a fracture that ran through the foundation of humanity. The office was never meant to succeed. It was designed, from its very first day, to point toward a catastrophic human limitation. To feel the weight of this system, you cannot start with the wealthy men in grand robes walking the polished stone of Jerusalem. You have to go back to the dust of a wilderness. The architecture of the office begins at the base of a mountain wrapped in thick, dark cloud. When the laws concerning the priesthood are handed down in the ancient texts of Exodus, the instructions span chapters of excruciating, agonizing detail. The Creator does not merely say, "Appoint a leader." He provides an engineering schematic for a mediator. Every thread of Aaron's garments is prescribed. Woven gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Fine-twined linen that would sit heavy and hot against the skin. In the relentless desert sun, a golden plate must be strapped to his forehead with a blue cord, bearing the heavy inscription, "Holy to the Lord," and resting directly over his heart. A heavy breastplate set with 12 massive, uncut stones, ruby, topaz, emerald, sapphire, each one carved with the name of a tribe of Israel. We tend to read these wardrobe requirements like a royal coronation, with every trembling step he takes. He holds a hammered bronze basin filled with the still warm blood of a goat. We assume the gold and the gems are there to elevate Aaron above the common people, to establish his authority, to make him look important. But the text of Exodus reveals a much darker reason for the elaborate clothing. In Exodus 28, the instructions for the golden bells on the hem of the robe come with a chilling explanation. The text says the sound must be heard when he goes into the holy place, and when he comes out, so that he does not die. The high priest's garments were not symbols of power. They were protective gear. Aaron is stepping into a radioactive zone of divine purity. The office of the high priest is constructed around a terrifying theological reality. Unholy humanity cannot survive direct contact with a holy God. If the mediator steps into the presence with the wrong incense, the wrong blood, or a tear in his linen tunic, the holiness of God will break out against him like a localized earthquake. This is not an honorary title given to a wise elder. This is a hazardous duty assignment that requires flawless execution. And the man chosen for this flawless execution is Aaron, the very man who, just chapters earlier, collected the gold earrings of the Israelites, melted them down, and forged a golden calf. He breathes shallowly. He is terrified. He is not here to pray. He is not here to perform a beautiful ritual for an audience, for them to worship while Moses was on the mountain. Aaron, the architect of Israel's most infamous idolatry, is the man commanded to wear the names of the tribes over his heart and mediate their forgiveness. It is a profound, intentional paradox embedded right at the beginning. The system demands absolute perfection, but it is built on the shoulders of a deeply compromised man. And that structural weakness would only amplify as the centuries stretched on, because the canvas tent in the wilderness would eventually be replaced by solid stone, and the fractured bloodline of Aaron was about to encounter the intoxicating poison of a kingdom. Aaron climbs Mount Hor. He strips off the heavy, gem-covered breastplate. He hands it to his son, Eleazar. Aaron dies in the mountain wind. Eleazar walks down. The nation marches. The desert sand turns to mud and rock. The canvas tent moves from camp to camp. Generations pass. The system rots. Eli sits on a wooden chair by the doorpost in Shiloh. He is heavy. He is blind. His sons plunge iron forks into the boiling sacrificial pots. They steal the meat before the fat is burned, because no one else is allowed inside this room. He is here to keep an entire nation from being consumed by a holiness they cannot survive. They sleep with women at the entrance of the sanctuary. A messenger runs from the battlefield with torn clothes and dirt on his head. The Ark of the Covenant is captured. Eli falls backward. His neck breaks on the hard ground. The robes pass to the next man. And the next? Solomon builds a fortress of limestone and Lebanese cedar. The canvas tent becomes a monumental structure. The high priest trades desert dust for polished stone, but the bloodline splinters. Two men claim the ephod. Abiathar backs the wrong political faction. Solomon banishes him to a country town. Zadok stands alone in the temple. Generations pass. The kings grow restless. They resent the priests. King Uzziah kicks open the sanctuary doors. He holds a hot bronze censer in his fists. He demands to burn the incense himself. Azariah, the high priest, rushes in behind him with 80 men. They block the king's path. The king screams in rage. The skin on his forehead suddenly erupts in white. Flaky leprosy. He covers his face. He flees the room. The high priesthood is not a steady ascent. It is a slow, violent collapse. Then the Babylonians march over the eastern hills. They bring torches. They smash the towering bronze pillars into scrap metal. They set fire to the carved cedar panels. They drag the high priest Sariah to a military camp in Riblah. They execute him in the dirt. This exact scene repeats itself once a year, on the 10th day of the 7th month, for 15 centuries. It happens in a goat hair tent. 70 years of silence. No temple, no altar, no high priest, no blood to hold back the fracture. When the exiles finally return, they build a smaller, quieter temple. The office of the high priest returns, but the royal crown is gone. The priest becomes the de facto king. He becomes a politician. Then the Greeks march in. The office goes up for sale. Men buy the priesthood with silver talents. A Greek ruler slaughters pigs on the sacred altar. The unholy blood drips down the stones. A family of rural priests called the Maccabees fight back. They pick up swords. They reclaim the temple, but they refuse to let the power go. They declare themselves high priests. They declare themselves kings, warrior priests with bloody hands, wearing the woven ephod. The sacred garments are no longer holy relics. They are political weapons. The system is unrecognizable from the tent in the wilderness. The men wearing the robes are compromised, violent, and bought. But the title remains. They are still called the high priest. And to understand the absolute tragedy of what is being lost in these centuries of war, you have to look closely at the ancient Hebrew words they used to describe his job. In a barren desert where the wind howls against the canvas. It happens in a modest wooden structure in the hills of Shiloh. When you read the English translations of Leviticus chapter 16, you find a detailed manual for a day called the Day of Atonement. It is the one day of the calendar year where the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, the great priest, must carry the blood of a slaughtered goat behind the heavy veil. The title Kohen Gadol is fascinating because greatness in the ancient Hebrew imagination was not defined by political power or lavish wealth. Greatness was defined entirely by proximity to the divine presence. He is great because he is the only human being on earth allowed to breathe the air in the most dangerous room in existence without instantly dying. And the entire survival of the nation hinges on a single Hebrew verb that describes exactly what he does inside that dark, incense-filled room. The English text says, he makes atonement. The Hebrew word is kafar. It appears over 100 times in the Old Testament, and its physical etymology is far more concrete than a high-level theological concept. The root of kafar literally means to cover over, to smear, or to coat. In fact, the very first time a physical form of this word appears in the biblical scroll, it has absolutely nothing to do with a priest, a golden altar, or a temple. It appears in Genesis chapter 6, when a man named Noah is instructed to build a massive wooden ship. It happens in a monumental limestone temple built by a king in Jerusalem, and centuries later, in a rebuilt temple funded by the taxes, and coat it kafar inside and out with heavy, sticky pitch. The pitch acts as a sealant. It creates a necessary, watertight barrier between the fragile human family huddled inside the wood and the overwhelming, destructive force of the floodwaters raging outside. If you are realizing that these ancient Hebrew connections completely change the way you understand the biblical text, you are exactly who this channel is for. Leave a comment below with a thought and hit subscribe, because every week we dig past the English translations into the raw architecture of the text. So the high priest smears the warm blood onto the golden lid of the Ark of the Covenant. He is not just checking a box on a religious to-do list. He is creating a theological sealant. He is applying a protective coating of innocent life over the rebellion of the people, standing in the suffocating smoke, desperately trying to keep the unyielding holiness of God from breaking out and destroying the camp. This physical reality completely rewrites how we are supposed to understand the purpose of the sanctuary. Atonement is not a divine mood swing, where an angry God is suddenly calmed down by the sight of violence. It is a biohazard containment strategy. But the fatal flaw with kafar, the problem with merely covering something over, is that the rot underneath the sealant remains entirely unchanged, of a pagan empire. But the core reality never shifts. First there was Aaron, stepping into the dark. Then his son Eleazar. The blood of a goat can coat the surface, but it cannot rewire the human heart, which means the sealant will inevitably wear off, and the terrifying ritual will have to be repeated 12 months later. There is a glaring inadequacy, built directly into the DNA of the Aaronic priesthood, and 1,000 years before Aaron was even born, a bizarre, phantom figure stepped out of the pages of Genesis to prove that a completely different order of priest was coming. Abram walks into the king's valley. His men are exhausted. Their sandals are caked with the mud and blood of a violent rescue mission. They drag the heavy, clinking silver and captured livestock of conquered warlords behind them. Abram has just slaughtered a coalition of kings to pull his nephew out of captivity. The dust is still settling. Then a shadow moves across the valley floor. A man approaches. He is not carrying a sword. He is not wearing the woven gold ephod of Aaron, because Aaron will not be born for another 500 years. There is no tabernacle. There is no bronze basin. There is no Levitical law. The text of Genesis 14 simply says his name is Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High. He holds out a crust of baked bread and a cup of dark, crushed wine.